Soupies, welcome back to another Tuesday, another week, another video. I hope you're doing well. As you have guessed from the title, I'm talking about Bridgerton today, the Netflix show. I know I'm late to be talking about it, but I really felt that I wanted to share my thoughts on it with you guys because number one, I actually really enjoyed it as a show. It seems to be half-half. Half the people absolutely love it. Half the people think it's really damaging and quite controversial. And the second reason I wanted to do a video on it was because there are a few things that I just felt like I had to share with the world after watching it that just clarified some things about sex education. I don't know what you'd like to call this. A brain fart video maybe? A review maybe? A sex ed video? I'll put my sex ed hat on. So, most of the talk on Bridgerton online was about the Duke. Duke Simon. He was very, very pretty indeed. Photo. There you go. For those of you who are interested. Woo! Ha! But beyond the handsomeness, there is an actual storyline, I swear, I swear. This video might not make too much sense if you haven't watched it. You'll definitely be more clued in if you did watch the show. It's on Netflix, and also, just fair warning, this video is going to contain spoilers. I have to talk about it in order to talk about the points that I want to get across. Here's a summary of the show. It's based on a book that is set in 1813, and it's mainly about a family called the Bridgertons. One particular Bridgerton, and that is Daphne. She becomes of age. She is then debuted in the world, wanting to find a husband, and she is just crazy naive. There's a rival family called the Featheringtons who are like not as good as the Bridgertons. Now Daphne's brother has a friend, the Duke, Simon, who is such a player, and Daphne's pissed off because she's trying to find a husband and she wants to marry for love. He's pissed off, the Duke, because he's getting like all this unwanted attention from women, and so they make a plot to pretend to go out with each other. You see where this is going? And lo and behold, they fall in love. They get married and off they pop to his massive mansion so they can make some bye-byes. That is the plan. Thing is, Simon doesn't want to have kids because he's got some bad trauma from his childhood and his dad was a bit of a prick, let's be real. And meanwhile, Daphne has no idea how having kids actually works, and they do it a lot. A lot. It's a big premise of the show. So much doing it. But every time that they do it, he finishes himself without her, and she doesn't really quite clock on that that means that they're not gonna have a baby until she finds out properly how the birds and bees work, if you know what I mean. And when she does find out, she is pissed off, as you would be, and so she puts them in a position where she could get pregnant. That is the premise of the show. Boom. Oh, and there's this gossip girl character who's basically writing these newsletters. It's essentially just a YouTube commentary channel, but really, really posh. Nobody knows their identity. There's more to it than that. But that is what you missed on Glee. And as I said, there are 5 cool things that I wanted to talk about and bring up, just important points, and 5 things to do with sex ed I really wanted to make clear. So anyone who has watched the show, anyone who plans on watching the show can just be like, I'm well equipped. I know how to do sex the right way. So cool things. Let's get those out of the way. Number 1, the aesthetics and the music, just the vibe of the show. It's so pretty. There are some shows that are done in just like a very different way, and like for non-technical people you can't quite understand what it is, but you're like, I like this, it's different. Grand Budapest Hotel, that's one, for example. This whole Bridgerton was filmed in Technicolor. It's so flamboyant, the outfits are over the top, the ball scenes are over the top. It's very indulgent. I think it's like just the right escape that I personally needed during lockdown. And the music makes it all so surreal, because what they've done is they've taken like modern songs, Ariana Grande, Taylor Swift, and they're playing it in the 1800s on like orchestra and quartets, and it's very pretty. I have to say I really like that. Some people found it too weird. I just thought it was a cool mashup. It had like Beauty and the Beast vibes, but with music that I like from the top 40s. A for effort, A for execution. Yay. The second thing that I liked was a representation of black people who were very wealthy, and it wasn't like touched upon in like, ooh, race, you know? Shonda Rhimes produced, and so I guess it makes sense. And I just thought it was so awesome to see diversity without segregation in that way. There's quite a few people of colour, yay. And the queen bee of the whole show was a black woman, so I just think that's really cool. It does bring up a question though on like historical accuracy, especially like with the crown being such a big thing at the moment. How much do we have to try and portray accuracy in historical representations? But Honestly, I didn't think it was a bad thing. I think that it's not just up to entertainment education alone to tell you what's truth. Like, if you watch a show and you just believe all of it to be true, then you're a bit silly, aren't you? You really should be looking at the history yourself to be able to realise that this was not historically accurate. And I personally just like to see the representation. But then that's just me. Let me know your thoughts. The third thing that I want to mention, which I kind of liked, I just wanted to bring it up, but I did like that the representation of diversity elsewhere. There was a gay storyline, and there was one that was like hinting to maybe being bi Benedict right up until the end. Like, we were really thinking, you know, that there was maybe something there, and I appreciate that it was like approached in a non-cliche way. You know me, I love a little bit of LGBT plus representation, but one thing that I will say, a little tut-tut to Netflix, was it was also a little bit queer baiting. There was one gay scene, and it wasn't very big, and it certainly wasn't like the main part of the storyline. It showed two people with their shirts off. It was used a lot in the marketing. I can definitely see that there was a little bit of queer baiting involved, where people are using that term, and that was not cool, Netflix. So be careful when you tease, but also thank you for including LGBT plus representation. It feels like the cream egg video all over again. And the other thing that I liked, which is also about representation, but it's gonna make me sound like a really bad person, I really liked how they used like medium attractive people. That sounds so terrible, doesn't it? But what I mean is, I'm so sick and tired of watching shows where the casting has happened for like unbelievably attractive people. You know, objectively one-sided, all looking the same, how the media thinks protagonists should look. And this show didn't do that. Sure, there are a few people, cue Simon. There are also other people who I'm not going to cue. I'm not saying they're ugly, I'm just saying they're not like conventionally pretty. And I really appreciated that variety being in there too. It's something that I noticed and I was like, kudos! It was normalising. And the other thing that I liked about it, not just being based on looks, was that there was this real power dynamic that showed like badass women, like cool badass women, and very weak men. And when do you see that in TV shows, you know? So that was refreshing too. And finally, number 5, the thing that I liked about Bridgerton was the details. There were so many cute tiny little details that I wanted to read up about, and when I did, I realised they're intentional, and that just makes me feel happy. I like the details, you know, it's the small things. My exploration of this came about when I saw bumblebees on the Bridgerton's, what are these? The flappy bits that men wear, lapels, is that what you call them, on a shirt? And I was like, why are there bumblebees on the Bridgerton shirt? The costume designer explained that it was like a symbolism of the Bridgertons being very hardworking and a tight-knit community, like bumblebees. Meanwhile, the Featheringtons, which is like the opposite camp, their show was like butterflies. They had butterflies everywhere, and it was very tastefully done. But the whole point of that was to be like symbolising change and transformation, because they like found money and means, and also social butterflies, and being very show-offy and flamboyant. So it was cool. It was cool. I appreciate it when there's like meaning behind the meaning, you know? So yay Bridgerton! Now for the not so yay Bridgerton bits, more the discussions and like, yes, but let's remember, you know, those points. I have 5 of those, and they're entirely to do with sex. And the reason for that is because there is so much sex in this show. Oh my god. How do you feel about sex scenes in movies and TV shows? Some people say that's very unnecessary. Some people say, yeah, but does entertainment have to be necessary? Like, why not include it? And I can honestly see it from both sides. But one thing that I will say is this is not the kind of show that you want to watch with your parents. Even sometimes with Jamie around, I was just like, yeah, this is a lot. Not as in very revealing, but also it is very revealing. But just a lot as in voluminous. Like, there were some episodes that was just fully sex scenes. Number 1, how crazy naive women were in the 1800s and how they were treated as property. It's such a big question that's raised, like, how on earth does Daphne not know until a while after she's been sexually active that there's a specific part of the sexual procedure that makes babies. That's madness to me. Even self-pleasure, like her coming to find out about it, was so late. And just at many times I felt myself thinking, what? How do these women not know? But it's because sex ed wasn't a thing and women weren't entitled to know. And whilst I really appreciate that being a conversation and people being like, wow, haven't we come so far? I just wanted to point out that this idea that women are seen as property, don't know about things, and that they're treated in this stupid, almost infantilized way still exists today, particularly in minority communities. I just wanted to point that out because I feel like that's being left out of the conversation. I can't speak for all cultures, I can certainly speak for my own, and when I say that it's definitely still a thing in certain parts of the Asian communities, a lot of people are still very traditional, and a lot of women are being told and brought up even now to think that their only role in life is to be a wife to a husband who makes babies, and it's clearly not cool. Many women today are still being told that they can't do what they want, like going to university or love who they want or work, in fear of bringing dishonor to their family, which is a very bizarre thing. And it's not just the women either, it's the men too. There's a huge amount of pressure on men to do the right thing, to make sure you do what's right for the family. In the plotline of the show, there's a bit that seems almost ludicrous because Simon risks his life, as does Daphne's brother, over the fact that they were like feeling things for each other. And it just sounds so odd, but the reality is that still kind of happens today in certain areas of society, and we shouldn't be forgetting that in the conversation. Point number 2 that I wanted to mention was about contraception. So in the sex scenes, of which there were many, 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 pulling out was the only contraception that they seemed to use. And I get it. Maybe the coil wasn't advertised as much, I'm speaking sarcastically, back in the 1800s, but I still thought it was very important to emphasise that pulling out is not a very effective contraceptive method. Hannah Witten actually did a really cool video on this very recently. I will link to it. And the idea that anyone could pull out successfully and on time that many times, many sex scenes, just not realistic. So I just wanted to point out with your family planning that you shouldn't be taking Bridgerton as an example for what you do in the bedroom. You can't think, oh well, Simon did this to make sure he didn't have a baby, that's what I'll do, because guarantee you the probabilities of that working very well that many times is very low. The third sex point that I wanted to bring up was to do with simultaneous finishing. In the many sex scenes that there were 2 things that Daphne and Simon seemed very synced up on. The first was when they were ready for penetrative sex, and the second thing was when they finished. Seem to happen on time, which, if you're not in the magical world of film, is actually quite hard to achieve. It's not how sex works all the time, and making it seem that way with so many scenes all basically showing the same simultaneous thing puts a lot of pressure on people. It's just not realistic. Sometimes you gotta take turns. In LGBT+ relationships in particular, turn taking during sexual activity is hugely common, and a lot of straight couples can and have learned a lot from that, and it could be really fun. So it's a little bit of a shame that they didn't sort of show the full extent, seeing as they were showing sex in such a large volume. There couldn't be some more variety in that, you know? But that's another point that Shaaba, the sex ed teacher, wanted to mention. Daphne and Simon are pretty simultaneous and in sync. Doesn't happen. Doesn't make you bad if you can't make that happen. The fourth point that I wanted to bring up, trigger warning, talking about sexual assault here, just click off if you need to, was about consent. So there's a scene where when Daphne does find out that it is the male seed, shall we say, that enables you to be pregnant, and that Simon was ensuring that she was not consuming said seed. Is that the right way to soften and phrase it? You know what I mean. There is a scene where she then gets very raunchy, does the thing, and she basically forces Simon to finish in a way that can impregnate her. And some people online really felt that the show romanticized a toxic relationship. There were many points of it which was toxic, I will agree with that, and also that it romanticized because he should have consensually done that and not been forced to in a non-consensual way. I do get that, but I also feel that the other thing that people aren't talking about as much when they say that is that Daphne was also having many sexual acts with the intent that she was going to get pregnant, and he didn't tell her when she didn't know that that was happening. So really, was that consensual either? Consent has to be black and white. I don't want what I'm saying to be taken out of context. My point from this, with Shaaba and the sex ed hat on, is that consent is always required, and if there is a grey area, there shouldn't be. So make sure for every single act that is consensual. Even if partway through your partner decides that they don't want to finish with you, that is their prerogative and you cannot force them to do that. That is the teaching moment. But I think what the show really brought up was a very interesting question of, within this grey area, where consent lies. If you're interested in this particular point, there have been full articles written about it, and also the book portrays it with Daphne's like internal monologue, which makes it seem like even more of a grey area because of what she was thinking. I guess what I'm saying is I don't know where I stand on that. I don't know. What I do know, and what the only outcome of the discussion should be always be consensual, always be informed, don't put yourself in a position where you're questioning it. And for my fifth and final sex ed Shaaba point, it's not all about penetrative play. And actually I do think that the show did a good job at representing that. Some people online seem to really disagree with me, but I didn't see everything being to do with penetrative play. As you hopefully know, the way to stimulate and to finish and to gain pleasure is not just through penetration, and there are two scenes in particular, one on a library ladder and one after an argument in a stairwell, that I think very much showed that it's not just about penetrative play. But one thing that Bridgerton perhaps wasn't as fantastic as portraying is that when penetrative play was involved, it's not just about the man finishing, you know? There's another partner there, and because we don't always finish simultaneously, you've got to make sure you're looking out for the other person. You know, go help the player out. Don't leave him hanging. Just be compassionate, be considerate, and I mean, maybe there's multiple people, whatever floats your boat, just make sure that everyone else involved is also having a good time and gets the job done in the same way that you are. So that's it. That's the video. I feel a little bit funny talking about this stuff, not because I'm a child. I actually talk about this stuff a lot with my friends, but sex education is not really something I've brought onto this channel much, so I hope it hasn't shocked you. If it has, you're probably not in the right place, because this is an educational point for everyone. I'd like to think that we can all have these kind of discussions. I'd love to know what you thought of the show, whether you agree with me, whether you don't, let me know. And if I've intrigued you to watch Bridgerton, feel free to do so, but just make sure it's not in front of your parents or at work, because that will definitely lead to an awkward scenario. That is it from me today. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to see more. That's what we do here. We unpack things, we share our opinions in an aim to expand all of our knowledge and be better as people. For now, I will love you and leave you. I will see you next week on Tuesday with another video. Be kind and have a great day. Bye!